Welcome back. We're here with billionaire investor Sam Zell talking about his investments. Sam, let's talk about Tribune Company now. You said earlier this summer that Tribune Company should emerge from bankruptcy by the end of the year. Now it looks like that ain't going to happen.
I think that's right.
When do you think it's going to emerge, and how frustrated are you by the process?
I think that with some reasonable luck, I think it'll be out sometime in probably the end of the first quarter. I've been involved in a lot of bankruptcies in my life, most of the time as the buyer of the debt as opposed to the debtor in possession. Bankruptcies, by definition, are very frustrating, and they will continue to be.
But how are you going to get it done by the end of the first quarter? Because, a lot of people argue that you've got to settle allegations made by some of the bondholders that the Tribune LBO, which you helped lead, was effectively, they argue, fraudulent because Tribune Company was already insolvent when you took it over. How are you going to settle that? You negotiated with them?
Well, I think the answer is that, many of the bankruptcy cases have fraudulent conveyance arguments made. Most of the junior creditors in most of the scenarios will allege a fraudulent conveyance. In the end, it's very difficult to prove. Number one. Number two, in this particular case, I don't think it's valid, but ultimately it becomes a basis for negotiation.
Is it an option on the table for you to give up your warrants to buy 40% of Tribune for $500 million in the negotiation? Is that an option that you're willing to consider?
I don't think that structure and that original plan will survive the bankruptcy.
Can we ask you if you regret this decision? I mean, is this the worst business decision you ever made?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the most amount of money I've ever lost in a single deal. But
so
the answer is,
if you could turn back time.
Yeah, but if you could,
right,
that's like maybe I should have married somebody else. Or,
I hope your wife isn't listening.
Oh, but she is, I'm sure. But the answer, the answer is that you can't look back. As I've said oftentimes, my head only works straight. So the answer is if we made a mistake or it didn't work out, so it didn't work out.
It's been known to happen that people make mistakes, right?
Next.
Right.
And in this particular case, there was such a crash in the revenue side of the entire newspaper business. Nobody, as you can see by the other companies, nobody can survive.
Another thing here is the issue of risk. I wanted to go back to your investment portfolio, your new private equity fund. How much risk are you willing to tolerate? In other words, a lot of this debt that you're buying, do you think the value could go down a lot more before it goes up?
I don't think in those terms. It's all about risk and reward. I'm willing to take a lot of risk if I think there's a lot of reward. And the amount of risk I'm willing to take diminishes as the potential reward diminishes.
But you're saying that the market, or this distressed market, could recover a lot more slowly and less dramatically than in past, times, which would indicate to me that you're going to have to wait a lot longer and the profits aren't going to be as rich.
Again, it's a function of what you pay for it. Okay, so in the end, that's the analysis. You can't just sit there and paint a picture on the screen and say slower, therefore. Everything is very much an individual story case.
Sam, when you say that the purpose of this distressed fund is effectively loan to own, I take it that some 3 to 5 years from now, when all these refinancing comes due, you expect to be in an advantageous position. Does that also not assume that the banks out there are not going to be willing lenders to the commercial real estate market 3 to 5 years from now when all these refinancings are expected to come?
Oh, I think that the commercial banks are in the business of lending money, and they suffer through periodic episodes like they're going through right now, but ultimately they're in the business of lending money and making spreads, and commercial real estate is an awfully big part of that environment, and I can't see any scenario where it's going to end.
How squeezed are they right now? How would you rate their health versus, let's say, 5 years ago?
Well, clearly the major banks have suffered a very difficult period, and obviously they're less healthy than they were 5 years ago. On the other hand, they're a lot healthier today than they were a year ago, and I suspect they'll be a lot healthier a year from now.
Sam, $700 billion TARP 1. How much of that money is taxpayers going to get back?
I don't know. It all depends on how the government and this administration deals with it. Based on what I think was originally the plan, I would have expected a significant portion of that to be returned.
Okay, we got 20 seconds. GM and Chrysler, also the auto industry, they've gotten anywhere between $80–90 billion in total aid. If I'm a taxpayer, I got to see that money back?
Not likely.
Why not?
Because basically but the American car companies are not competitive. And despite what's happened, they still haven't addressed both labor issues.
We got to take a break. We'll be right back with Sam Zell. We're going to be back in just a few minutes, so don't you go away. Sam Zell and his Ducatis.